Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. I hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far, with the prevailing belief now being that bringing Dashy back to the OpTic team for the second time in a couple of months is probably not the way to go for the success of their season. The OpTic Huke rumours have now taken on a new weight, with an interesting tweet coming out from Huke last night and some rather spicy replies as well. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I'd greatly appreciate it. Congratulations also to Temp, who's managed to get what I guess is like the equivalent of the Dark Matter camera in this game. Must be quite the grind there, so fair play. Donny Temp's done it legitimately, it seems. And yeah, Scump was at a game last night, and well, as Mr. Strawberry says in the replies, no roster announcement yet. We still don't really know what's happening here, and of course, the teams have got to get back into scrimming relatively soon, and even, well, OpTic tweet out once again last night this kind of video from their kind of Road to 100 No GB series that they did, and it's kind of frustrating. These Road to 100 No's nowadays, like, they just never get finished, and certainly this one will not get finished with the same team. You can see Dashy on the left-hand side here of the screen. Yes, Shotzzy was going off. This is recorded a long time ago now anyway, but yeah, just the fact that they've still got Dashy in some content pieces on Twitter does raise some interesting questions about the possibility of running it back yet again. Now, some of you guys saw this last night from Breaking Point, and I didn't make this tweet, so I wasn't really sure exactly to wrap my head around what this means, but it's actually quite an interesting tweet, really. So the idea is that if OpTic don't win an event this season, then by the end of 2023 or by 2024, if Dashy is still competing, then Dashy will be their most successful ever player still competing. So effectively, and this kind of shows, I think, to an extent, how OpTic over, you know, the dynasty period, they were obviously so dominant, and the last few years it's fallen off quite dramatically, really. The fact that, okay, all their great players ever that have won many events with OpTic, even back to the big timers, but during the dynasty days, the Nadeshots, the Crim6, the Formals, like, and obviously Scump, after this season, Scump's going to retire. So that means that out of all the players that have ever competed on OpTic, the only, well, the most successful player for OpTic will be Dashy, because he's won 2 events with OpTic, and you know, Clay won an event with OpTic way back in the Ghost days. iLLeY and Shotzzy will still be on OpTic with 1, and TJ as well. It also counts from the Black Ops 4 days, but apart from that, all the other players that OpTic have had in recent memory that have won multiple events in more than 2 will have retired. So wherever Dashy is competing at the end of this season, if OpTic don't win an event this year, with, of course, Scump obviously holds the record as it stands for competing player with wins with OpTic, with like 30 wins or whatever with OpTic, maybe slightly less than that, but pretty much along those lines. When Scump retires, the next highest number of event wins with OpTic goes to Dashy from Vegas 2018, and now, of course, Vanguard at Major 1 2022. So, you know, quite an interesting stat, really, that feels like it shouldn't be true, but, you know, maybe the same could be said for other organizations as well, which is with the organization, the tenure of OpTic, you'd think that, you know, there's got to be someone else still competing that's won more events with them, but after Scump goes, it'll technically be Dashy has won the most events with them, unless, of course, they win events from now to the end of the season, which, of course, could certainly be the case. So Methods back in Boston, late night vibes, I'm sure they're getting scrimmers back into business, and this is the difficulty that OpTic are facing to a certain extent, is that going into Major 1, they were rather under-practiced. Going into Major 2, they're going to be rather under-practiced, you would imagine anyway. Yes, there's the new spawns. We believe in a few days' time they might change the spawns. That's what Doug thought. Whether that happens, I don't really know at this point. Obviously, it's Infinity Ward. You can't really guess what they're going to play out, as we've seen over the last several years, and certainly in this particular title. But obviously, some of the teams are getting ahead of OpTic again, and if OpTic have a bad Major 2, let's say they did run it back and they have a bad Major 2, or like, even if they don't run it back and have a bad Major 2, well, again, they say, oh, you know, we didn't have the greatest practice, it was tough, but, you know, we'll see how it goes. Of course, they've got to determine what their roster's going to be first. Now, this was the tweet from Huke last night that gathered an awful lot of attention for multiple different reasons. So Huke actually tweeted this out twice. He deleted it initially and then reposted it. So the initial version was the following that then got deleted, that said, "It's that time again, fire emoji, double down," and then he changed it slightly, because of course this got deleted, and people thought, oh my god, he's tweeted that he's joining OpTic and that he's deleted it, it must be true, but then he tweeted again and changed around where the emoji goes. So, you know, this guy is just playing with fire with YouTube titles like I sometimes do before putting them live, and now he says doubling down rather than double down, and the fire emoji is now at the end. So, you know, congratulations, Huke, made an awful lot of difference to what the tweet says, but it's the same deal. Now, of course, the interesting thing is not really what he's tweeting, but what he's quote tweeting, which is this tweet from back in December 2019, just before going into 2020, after a tricky season, right, that Huke had that year, if you guys remember. That was the Black Ops 4 season. He was on Envy, of course, for a large part of the year, didn't go particularly well. He asked Envy to trade him to Splice. He wanted to join Splice with Temp and those guys and try and make that work. He joined that team. It was such a great team on paper, but never really delivered anything with Jerd, and a pretty promising team they had. that, but it never actually delivered anything. And then after that season, he was, of course, back on Envy and, was then trying to make his decision on what was going to happen going forwards. Of course, we know that he was involved in getting Shotzzy onto the team, taking a pay cut so they could pay Shotzzy's buyout from the Splice organization, that he wasn't playing COD for them at the time, but he was playing Halo, bring him over to the Dallas Empire, and the rest is history from there. And yeah, 2020 vibes. So pretty interesting, right, that he's kind of quote tweeting a tweet from the start of 2020, pretty much, yeah, the start of 2020, and now he's quote tweeting it, 3 or so years later, start of 2023, doubling down on what was happening that year. And of course, there was something rather interesting happening that year from the Huke perspective, which was nonetheless the Zeo guys forming up, right? That was when Huke, Shotzzy, and iLLeY came together, and that was 3 years ago at the start of 2020, and now we're seeing 3 years later, he's quote tweeting the same tweets, saying doubling down, saying, it's that time again. Like, obviously people are going to say, well, he's talking about the possibility of reuniting with these guys and making that happen, because we did wonder, right, with Huke not being spotted on the LAG starting roster we currently have rumoured, and with him not spotted on the Academy roster, where's he going to go, right? Is he going to go just straight up to Halo? Is he going to join another team that isn't OpTic? Is he going to go to Challengers but not on their Academy, which doesn't really make any sense anyway? So, probably Huke to OpTic is the most viable possibility. But then just a couple of days ago, we heard rumours that, oh yeah, the people that OpTic want have now fallen through, and maybe Huke isn't their number one guy. Of course, they wanted Pred, they wanted Arcitys, they wanted maybe another set of players, but if they can get Huke, or if they have to run it back with Dashy, to me it's a no-brainer, right? If Huke's the only guy you can reasonably get, and I'm sure they could get him at the end of the day, because, look, he's not part of Los Angeles Guerrillas' future, it seems. He was obviously from the LAG side one of the first guys that was going to go. They've built around RCs, they've built around Spart in terms of the 3-year deals. Neptune and Huke were the guys that if a change was going to happen, those would be the guys to first go, and, therefore Huke should be gettable, right? I don't think LAG are going to hold on to him from a contract perspective for dear life, and even though, look, we know that Huke might not be the greatest player in terms of fundamentals, and often there's been some criticisms of Huke that when he makes a bad play, it takes him a bit of time to really understand how to change that around in the future, and maybe, that's not ideal for OpTic given their current weaknesses, but at the same time, with Rambo there, back with the guys that he was successful with a few years ago during the Dallas Empire days on the Modern Warfare 2019 game, right, which is obviously rather similar to this game in certain ways, that could still be a positive. So I know that many OpTic fans who have been around about a decade would say, you know what, I'd love to have got Huke on OpTic back in 2015 in Advanced Warfare, like, during that season where he was so dominant, really, when he came into the game at like 15 years of age. Nowadays, Huke might not be quite the same player, but again, it could be a thing with Priester or with Standy, where, based on the system that they're in, they look worse than they are. Like, I don't think Huke's necessarily washed, I just think he's been in a difficult spot the last few years. His, raw potential is still incredibly high, and we've seen that over many years, and he does have every season at least one good event. Last year, Stage 2 playoffs in the Grand Final, or the Stage 2 major rides in the Grand Final against FaZe, it was absolutely different gravy. Now, this tweet, of course, you're seeing right now is from Trippy, the OpTic Halo guy, who's replying as follows. Now, of course, my theory on this is, that I've said a couple of times recently, is that, if some players that might be involved are tweeting at Huke and kind of tweeting about stuff that is rumoured or bait potentially, it's more likely to be bait. However, if you see things that get tweeted and then deleted, then it makes it more likely. So a couple of guys pointed this out to me, which is, from Retals here, who I believe is one of their Rokkr League guys over on OpTic, and he tweets out the kind of smirk face emoji thing, and then shortly after, he then deletes this tweet. So it's like, when that happens, it does make you think. If people, like if Scump was replying to this, if Shotzzy was replying, if iLLeY was replying, you'd think, oh yeah, there's no way they're just baiting about it, right? Even though it'd be pretty, brutal bait to do to Huke if he's actually not joining the team and you're all replying to it. But in this case, he tweeted this and then it's since been deleted, which does make you think maybe he thought, oh yeah, maybe I shouldn't have tweeted that because actually, Retail's doing the leaking like Shotzzy would normally be doing, but probably they've logged Shotzzy out of all of his social media accounts, so we can't leak anything over this period, which seems to be what's happened over the last couple of days. Also, this from Zach here, Director of Creative Strategy over at OpTic. He's liked a few tweets over the last 24 hours or so, and one of them is this tweet right here from none other than, well, also this from Trippy, but also this from Huke, so pretty much confirming as well that, maybe there's something going on. So that's kind of the extent of it. Interesting tweet from Huke that implies the reformation potentially of that trio they had a couple of years ago, which they could do again on the OpTic side, and plenty of further indications as to why that may indeed be the case. And we saw the other day, right, where Scrappy was basically mentioning, and we discussed it yesterday, that, running it back with Dashy is not the way to go. And even if the Huke move isn't ideal, it isn't maybe the perfect guy they would want, it's got to be better than running it back again, because if you run it back again, there was incredibly little upside. It's only downside. It's only going to go badly again at some point in the future. future. The lack of trust and respect has got to be gone. If they do run it back, it's not going to last long, and you're kind of writing off stage 2. The Huke move might be a kind of, do or die moment for Huke as well in his career. If this works out, it could be fantastic. Obviously, we know what they've done in the past with that trio, with Rambo as the coach, but if it doesn't work out, then Huke is going to be gone again soon, and where does he go next, right? It's going to be difficult to say where Huke goes next in his career, so this is kind of like a boom or bust type moment here for OpTic and also for Huke themselves, but nonetheless, it's worth the punt, right? It's got to be worth giving it a go. We know what those guys have achieved in the past, and it also allows Scump to go to the flex role or to the AR or whatever, which is what I would really like to see. I feel like Shotzzy and Huke as an SMG duo, okay, they're going to need a lot of fundamental training, and this is where I do think that OpTic kind of, they lack to a certain extent in terms of the staffing. They've got JP, they've got Rambo, but they don't really have like a general manager of the team. Obviously, other organizations, the likes of Los Angeles Thieves, have had that over the last few years, and while they haven't always made great decisions, we saw what's happened with other general managers at teams like Seattle Surge, building good futures for the team, and it feels like OpTic kind of do struggle in that sense, because Rambo kind of does the GM stuff, Hex kind of does the GM stuff. It's not so clear, and maybe like, if they had a dedicated guy in that role, they'd have had an easier transition period here from the former team to whatever's going to be the current team, and then Rambo can maybe fully focus on making sure that Huke and Shotzzy actually work as an SMG duo, and then whatever's going to happen on the AR line, if iLLeY's going to be the main, Scump's going to be the flex, or whatever exactly they're going to do. But yeah, Huke obviously phenomenal player in his day, and as Brian Stat says, quite an interesting point really, that is kind of a homecoming in a way to join the Envy brand again, that's now OpTic Envy, but OpTic and Envy partnered, right? So, and Huke was there for years, and now potentially he's coming back yet again to that franchise. I think it makes a fair bit of sense, and Huke even hinted at this, of course, the other day with this kind of a Zeo tweet that he did right here. So very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below, and as I say, if Huke doesn't go to OpTic, then where does he actually go? Because still the latest rumor that we've heard on the Los Angeles Guerrillas side, where he formerly was, is this might be the starting team, and then the academy team is going to be something like this, with no Huke to be found anywhere. So it gives further credence to this idea that potentially Huke to OpTic is going to be a thing. Would you guys like to see it? Is it far too late? But I think it's got to be worth a punt at this point, Huke to OpTic, if indeed that is a possibility. And surely it is a possibility. I'm sure that Huke would want to make it happen. I'm sure that OpTic would be able to make it happen. So it's probably just a matter of whether OpTic actually want it to happen, and whether, Scump is down and the rest of the guys are down, and whether there's any part of this in which Dashy can get involved again. But very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.